now we're good. So we're going to do it like we normally do. You're going to give your spiel. If you can keep it under 2 minutes, that's great. And then we'll have questions from the audience. So our first contestant tonight is the trustees of the trust fund, Joe Simone.
Diane, you thought it was 7 o'clock, he's on his way over.
Okay, here you go.
Luckily, it was in Newton.
Hold on to that. Yeah.
Keep my mask on?
Yes. So one other thing for you candidates, you're going to have to use the microphone. If you want to ask a question, please come to the microphone so the Zoom people can hear you as well. Okay? It's all yours, Joe.
Good evening, folks. Hopefully all is well in this different time. My name is Joe Simone, and I am currently a trustee of the trust fund, and I am running for the upcoming 3-year term. I've been on the trust funds committee for, I think, 15 years right now, so nothing too much changes, and it's pretty much all standard. But we're the custodians of perpetual care funds, expendable trust funds, charitable funds, and also capital reserve funds. We watch over the funds, and we only disperse funds based upon the wishes of the donors, i.e. By donors, I mean if the selectmen say, this needs to be paid out of this particular fund, we do it. The cemetery trustees are doing something and need a payment out of it. And that's what we do. Basically, it's akin to keeping your checkbook in the house. You have one account. We have, I think, probably 29 accounts that we handle. And it's pretty much it's an enjoyable task. It's just my way of giving back to the town. Any questions?
Thank you for all those years.
No, well, thank you very much. I appreciate it. And I want to thank the special request because I have to appoint my tax man tonight to get my taxes done, so I appreciate it. Thank you.
Oops, sorry about that. Okay. So in random order, how about Mary Jo? She is your, maybe not Mary Jo. Okay, skip her. Annie, you're up. So Annie is running for the budget, school board budget. Now, if you could hold the microphone there, that is what you're talking into.
Okay.
You can tap it, yeah, and just stick that anywhere. Okay.
Hi, I'm Annie Collier, and I'm running unopposed for the Sanborn School Budget Committee, so I won't take up much time here. It's been my pleasure to serve you for the past 6 years, and with your support, I'm looking forward to 3 more. The job of the Budget Committee is well defined in the New Hampshire RSAs. It does not involve setting policy. It doesn't involve assigning line items in the budget. Those are the job of the school board. The Budget Committee digs into past and present budgets to look at actual spending. We hear spending recommendations from both the school board and the administration, and we balance those recommendations with prudent attention to the ability of the taxpayers to fill the bill. The budget proposal this year is about $900,000 lower than now, with savings from the reconfiguration in the schools and with continuing trend in declining enrollments. Please note that absentee voting is available in March as it was in November. Please, everyone, vote in March. We get to have a huge impact on our schools, on our town, and on our property taxes when we vote. I'm happy to field any questions you might have tonight, or you can email me at acollier@sau17.net.
We do have a question from Zoom. This is from Tammy. It says, question for Annie. The second of 2 public hearings for House Bill 20 was held last week by the House Education Committee to receive public input. Since this proposed education bill could significantly impact statewide public education system funding, I would like to hear the candidate's stance on this potential statewide education voucher bill and why they feel the way they do.
Okay, who's that from?
Tammy.
Okay, hey Tammy, good question. I really believe in choice and competition. However, I'm not in favor of this particular bill as it's currently configured. I think it has some things that need to be fixed. The purported savings of $400,000 to, or 400 million, or whatever it is, this huge number that they've got out there to be savings to the state and to the state taxpayers, I think is not very fact-based. I think that there are some real problems with the way that they figured it out, so I think they need to take some time and figure it out. I do know that it's named for a very popular, now deceased representative, long-term representative, and the probability of passing is really high. I hope that they will fix it before they do.
I don't believe there's any more questions at this time for you.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, you're welcome. Okay, next is Mary Jo. Yep, you're up. Mary Jo is currently running for the town clerk's position and tax collector. She's also looking for a deputy. That's your microphone.
That's my microphone.
And that, just hold on to that.
Hi. Okay, you all know who I am. You should anyway. Mary Jo McCullough. I'm your town clerk tax collector. I've been your town clerk tax collector since 2003, so I'm quite qualified for the job. Do you have any questions?
What do you do?
And you know, Lisa, that's a good question because a lot of people don't understand what my office does. First and foremost, sorry, I'm out of breath. I went up and down the stairs 3 times. We title and register your vehicles. We register and we license your dogs. I print vital records. That's death, birth, divorce, and marriage licenses. We issue marriage licenses. We keep records of everybody and everything that goes on in the town. As tax collector, I do not determine how much your bill is. I only mail you a bill, and I collect your money and post it to your payments. One thing everybody needs to understand about my office, it is not ruled by the town rules. It is ruled by the state of New Hampshire. The state says this is what I do. So sometimes we get disgruntled people that come in and get very angry because this town, it's not the town. I am dictated by the state what I can and cannot do. I do not break the rules. I do bend them if I can, but that's, we try. Yeah, that's about it. Yeah, I mean, there's a gazillion things I do, but that's basically the gist of it. So, now you got any questions? Excuse me?
Did you include about elections?
Oh, yeah, we do those elections too, those things that come around every year. This past one in the fall was quite the challenge. We had a lot of help from people. Great election team put it together. It was safe, it was quick, and it was very efficient. One thing that did help out were the absentee ballots. New Hampshire's been doing absentee ballots since the beginning of time. It works. I suggest you do absentee balloting again instead of standing in this line. The other elections were quick because it was vote for a candidate and get out. You were voting on at least 3 ballots. So if you're coming to the polls, learn what's on the ballot, do your homework so you can get in and out of there. If you don't want to stand in line for a long time, then vote by absentee. The forms are on the website, they're downstairs. If you're in Sergeant Woods, they're in the community hall. Fill them out, get them to me, and when I get the ballots, I'll mail them to you. I don't have them yet. Looking right at you, Lisa, what else you got? What else you got? I would like to do this for another 3 years, and maybe one more 3 years. Then I can go, because I'll be old and I can retire. Other than that, I come out and vote. The more everybody should be voting, everybody should be paying attention. Do not ask me questions on Facebook. I will not answer you. Okay, do not like it. Don't like what goes on there at all. If you have questions to ask people, ask them personally. Take them aside and talk. Out and out fighting doesn't work for me, and I won't entertain it, so don't ask me any questions on Facebook. Okay, thank you.
You put it next to the microphone. Thank you. Okay. How about if we do the school board candidates, Heather and Micah. Thank you, Micah. I would have gotten it sooner or later. What we could do is we could have the both of you sit up here, and you can give your 2-minute spiel, and then people, if you want to ask questions, you can come up to the mic and ask them. How's that? Okay? You can grab grab a microphone each, and we'll go from there. If you need to, if you feel more comfortable sitting further apart, that's totally up to you guys.
That's good. We stand this close together.
Okay.
Done.
Yeah. We joked we're going to get COVID from campaigning.
All right, let's start with heads or tails, Heather?
Heads.
You got it.
So good evening. Hello, my name is Heather Ingham, and I'm running for school board for the Newton seat. I've been a resident of Newton for the past 15 years. I live here alongside my husband, who grew up here, and our 2 children, ages 13 and 5. I've been an active member of our community, participating in youth baseball, Memorial PTO, middle school boosters, task forces, and forums within the Sanborn School District. I've taken the time to educate myself on what will be expected of a school board member and been actively engaging with all parties to encourage collaboration. I believe in community volunteership and the importance of giving back and supporting all community members. I was raised with the belief that if you want to promote change, you need to take an active role. If elected to the Sanborn School Board, I'm committed to providing sound fiscal oversight, promotion and implementation of full in-person learning, increased reading skills and comprehension across all grade levels, and promoting all avenues of post-high school education. As a school board member, I will do my best to represent the town of Newton and its constituents. We are in difficult times and need balance and partnership to ensure that we can meet both the educational and budgetary needs of our community. I believe my strong organizational skills, my keen eye for detail, and creative problem-solving skills will be an asset on the school board, and I thank you for your time.
Put this on. Sorry. Whatever, I'm going to hold it. So first, I want to thank everybody for holding the event and giving us an opportunity to get to know each other better. My name is J.L. Micah Patillo. I go by Micah, and I'm excited to be running for a seat on the Sanborn School Board for the town of Newton. A little about my background first. My wife, Rachel, and I have lived in Newton for 12 years. We have 3 kids, Aletha, Eli, and Benjamin, aged 8, 6, and 4. Some quick bullet points. I'm a fiscal conservative, a strong critical thinker and decision maker. I have a passion for student success and academic performance, and I truly believe that if we work together, collaboratively, openly, and charitably, we can do great things together. So I'm running for school board with a few of those goals in mind, a few of those great things. If elected, I plan to work collaboratively and tirelessly to do 3 things. First, raise academic performance and not the overall budget. Our cost per student is higher than surrounding areas while our academic performance is lower. We can fix this without raising the budget through smarter, more efficient ways to use taxpayer dollars. Second, we need to raise students that are prepared to thrive in a modern economy. I believe in traditional education standards, but I also believe the world is changing very quickly. So we need to ensure we're maintaining solid academic foundations for our kids, but also continuing to innovate for the future. And third, we need people, right? We need to position our community as a place that's more than just this little part in the bottom of New Hampshire here that's next to Boston and close to the seacoast, but it's a real destination for people to come live, work, and raise a family. The more numbers we can get, the more people we can get, the more we can stem low enrollment, and we can make we can really make our community a place that has a better quality of life without raising the cost of living. In terms of my ability to effectively drive these goals, I'm a creative director in the marketing department at Southern New Hampshire University, where I manage a team of advertising writers, national ad campaigns, and the creative execution of multi-million-dollar budgets. I have a bachelor's degree in philosophy from St. Anselm College and a master's in philosophy from Boston College, where I cultivated skills necessary to parse complex problems, engage in critical discussion, and make effective decisions. I also teach both online and in person for SNHU. Everything I do is about communication. That's why I champion active listening, collaboration, and it's this approach that positions me well to serve the entire community, ensuring, as a school board member, a collaborative approach that takes into account a diverse population with diverse wants and needs. Thank you.
Our moderator just stepped in, so let's give her.
Diane, we don't need them anymore. You're doing
I was gonna say, Diane, you're doing a great job, just keep going.
So just give me a minute to get them set up.
Who's next?
You're gonna, they've done their introductions,
Yep.
and I believe we have some questions from the audience. So we're on, so people on Zoom can hear you,
Round me up.
and you're over here with me.
All right, that sounds like a good spot to see. Let's start with our first question, go ahead.
Jamie Fitzpatrick. I have a question for both of you. Should you be elected, what will be your top priority? And should you be elected at the end of your term, how would you define that you had a successful term? Okay.
I guess
You
I'll
want to
go
go ahead?
first.
Sorry, yeah, you can.
So I think my top priority would be increasing the reading scores across the school district. I know with the intervention that is one of the goals. I do feel that we are lower at our reading scores than other districts, and that is something that I would like to focus on and ensure that we can improve that with the support of the intervention and other things that we can put into place. If I was at the end of the year, if I was successful, I would say that we have kept our budget low. We've increased our reading and our math scores throughout the district.
Okay, so to answer the same question, the top priority I have is student success in reading and math, right? We're low. Academic performance is low both in ELA and math. So it's important to do everything we can. I would make it a priority to raise academic performance in those two areas. And also, at the same time, thinking critically about how we do that, right? It's not just about making sure the scores go up, but we want to make sure that students are actually learning, actually performing better, right? There's a lot of ways that, you can test scores can go up, but like, what is the actual learning happening? What's really happening? So we want to do it in a way that's really, really positive, both for students and for teachers and the administration and for the whole community. So academic performance is really like the big goal, right? But reading and math are huge, and then if I were to say, hey, you're successful at the end of this term, it would not only be raising those scores, but also in 3 years, having developed some long-term goals and plans, right? A strategic vision for the district for the next 5 years, for the next 10 years. What can we do in that time, in my first term at least, to set up the district not just for success in math and reading in the short term, but also in the long term, right? What's the long game, so we can be not just successful but also sustainable.
Other questions?
Andy Collier. This is also for both of you. The superintendent has said that our costs per students are too high and they need to come down. About 70% of the budget is for staffing, like most New Hampshire schools. That means that according to stats from the New Hampshire Department of Education, we pay more teachers less money each. What solutions do you have for lowering overall costs and paying our teachers more? And how would you have voted on the proposed $900,000 lower budget that reduces some staff positions and some special ed funds?
You want me to take this one?
You can take it first.
Yeah. So I think class sizes are the obvious answer, right? We look at if our cost per student is too high, we have to look at whether or not we're using our resources in the most efficient way. So responsibly increasing class sizes to a level that both allows us to free up funds, right? If you sort of reduce the 8.5 positions that we have in order to free up funds to pass teacher contracts and to compensate teachers appropriately for their work, then that means that we can, sort of stem the low enrollment tide, as it were, right? And create a bit more breathing room for those kinds of issues. I think ultimately class sizes, we need to look at that not just as in a blanket statement and say, oh, we're just going to yank up, jack up class sizes, right? It has to be done as it was, in cooperation with the administration, in cooperation with teachers, understanding what's the appropriate level to raise class sizes to, where, and how, and to how many, so that we don't sacrifice academic performance and delivery, but also being more efficient with our workforce.
And how would you have voted on the proposed budget?
I would have voted for that budget. I would have supported it.
So I agree that class sizes definitely need to be looked at. I believe that for the middle school and the upper, class sizes can be bigger. I do think for the lower grades, class sizes may need to be smaller because we know that the kids are learning routines and rituals and they're learning the fundamental skills and they need to have more support in those moments. But I do think for upper and lower schools, class sizes is not that big of a deal at the end of the day in a lot of classes, especially in the core classes. I know in one of my high schools, for one of my English classes, there was 40 kids in a class, and at the end of the day, I was able to access the curriculum. Other kids in my class were able to as well. I would have voted for the budget as well. For the health insurance, I would really look at collective bargaining and looking at what other health insurance options that the school has. I know at our agency, when we're looking for health insurance, we're going into the free market and looking at what insurance can give us the best deal. And I'm not sure what the district is doing at looking at different other health insurance avenues.
Other questions?
Diane, do we have some from Zoom?
Hi, Jim Baker.
I've got two for
According to this is for both of you. According to the school district administrator, the school district is saving $1.4 million as a result of the reconfiguration of the schools. $950,000 of that savings is budgeted to improve academic instruction. $450,000 remaining of that was returned to reduce taxes. Did you support the reorganization? And if not, why? And do you agree that unspent funds should be returned to taxpayers?
So for many of you know that I was first against the reconfiguration because I was looking at it from a parent perspective and an individual perspective. But after talking to the superintendent, talking to school board members, talking to other members of the community, I became aware of the cost savings, the lower enrollments of our district, and how we were house poor as a community. We had the seminary, we had 4 buildings, and making that reconfiguration actually saved us money in the long run, and it's actually giving us money to do the intervention to increase our reading skills, which is one of my goals if I am elected to the school board. I am in agreement with giving money back to the taxpayers. I've always said we should give money back as long as we're putting money in the capital fund, which is being done. Money was put back in, and then remaining money should go back to the taxpayers.
So from my perspective, yeah, I mean, my wife and I, one of the major selling points when we bought our house on Whittier was like, oh, great, we can walk to Memorial. The kids will be, will be there, and we'll have the middle school and all these things. But, so my initial reaction when I heard about the reconfiguration was like, oh no, this is terrible. But then, of course, like Heather's experience, you do a little research, you think not just about the impact on your own family, but you think about the impact on the community and what's best for everyone. And it was a win-win, right? Because not only do we get to offload facilities, but we also get to free up this money that is absolutely critical for academic performance. So, yeah, I eventually, didn't take too long, but I very much came around to it.
Thank you.
Yep.
I think we have some questions from people watching on Zoom. So Diane, you want to take the first one of those and read it out for them?
Sure. This is from Tammy, and she's asking about House Bill 20, which is what she had asked Annie, and she would like to know your stance on this as well, for the state education vouchers.
Yeah, I have a strong opinion on that. I don't know, like Annie said, I don't know that the numbers work out. It doesn't seem feasible that the kinds of numbers that they're talking about in terms of the fact that there's going to be no impact on budgets, there's going to be no impact on individuals across the state. I also worry about the effects of incentivizing taking, to such a great degree, taking people out of public schools, taking kids out of public schools. I think it's important that be looked at really, really carefully. I know that for some kids it's the right choice, but it's often the case that that choice should be made without other factors like monetary incentivization going on. So I'm skeptical of it, and I worry about the results.
I'm similar to Ms. Patillo. I do not agree with it. I worry about incentivizing. Desperate people do desperate things. Giving someone $5,000, pulling their kids out of school. I also worry about a voucher system. It's very similar to the voucher system. They've changed the name, they've changed a little bit, but we know how unsuccessful that was in Michigan, especially in low-income, low-poverty areas. So I would be against that bill.
All right, there's another question here. Excuse me. The Fremont tuition contract with Sanborn for high school students will expire in 4 years. Fremont has formed an ad hoc committee to research options, and it is my understanding that Sanborn is one of the 3 finalists Fremont is considering. So there's several parts to this question, so I'll do one at a time. Okay, her first question, this is from Tammy. What is your stance on renewing the Fremont contract or letting them go?
I would be in agreement with renewing the contract with Fremont. They've been part of our district for years. I know there was a time that they did leave historically, but they did come back. They're part of our community, especially within the high school. They participate all youth sports, as Fremont, Newton, and Kingston are always together. So I would want them to stay as part of our district.
And I would agree from a community perspective and from a sort of a cohesion perspective of the community, absolutely. And also, obviously, there's budgetary advantages to it. So I think that it's another way, and it's always the case, I think, the more that you involve more students, more perspectives, more ideas, more parents, you're building a stronger Sanborn that way. So we really need to take seriously the prospect of what might happen there and work as hard as we can to keep them with us.
Okay, her next question is, do you have some ideas to help entice them to stay?
Yeah, I'll take it. So one of the things that I've been thinking about more and more lately is what I've been calling the currency or the value of the Sanborn diploma, right? This is part of the second point when I said we need to prepare students ready to thrive in a modern economy. The world is changing. The idea that we need to simply graduate a student who's either ready to go to college, ready to go into the military, or ready to go to a trade school, there's more that we can do to prepare students for the world. And I think just as we have been in the past, a beacon for progressive education, competency-based learning, there's so much more we can do and build into the academic experience and in both interdisciplinary ways and ways of partnering with businesses local in the community to increase the value and the marketability of our students when they leave. That's one of the big things that I'd like to at least start the ball rolling on the school board.
That's really great. They actually do that. They have the ELAs there, and Carrie does a great job. I really have always thought that Fremont should be part of our school district. They should be part of our SAU. I know that they've talked about it in the past, but that is something I really would push for, is to have Fremont just be part of our SAU. I think that they're part of our community. I know that they're running out of room at Ellis, and they've talked in the past about possibly joining the middle school, and I think that would be really important to our community to continue that growth.
All right, her last question. If Fremont chooses to leave Sanborn at the end of their contract, which would result in reduction of 150 students, what are your ideas to deal with that large drop in enrollment and still offer similar programs and extracurricular opportunities at the high school?
I think that goes back to what Mr. Patillo and I earlier talked about with the ELAs, with Carrie's program, and doing more internships, more real-world experience, and also finding ways to partner with other community members to increase. I also think there's been some really great programs at the high school. They have aviation, they have trades, they have other things. They are looking into ROTC. I think there's a lot of great opportunities that we can grow to support.
For me, this is one of those situations where this happens a lot in my line of work, where it's like, okay, you've got this budget and you are expected to produce these results. Now the budget is cut. You are still expected to produce these results. Mm-hmm. So I think it's what you said, Heather, but it's also going to be a lot of little things, a lot of creative thinking, a lot of shifting this over here, a lot of moving that over there. It's going to have to be a critical look at a whole spectrum of what we do and what we offer in order to try and compensate for a loss without sacrificing academic performance, without sacrificing opportunity, and ultimately without sacrificing the success of our students.
I agree.
Yeah.
That's it from my end.
Well, thank you. We got another question, sorry. Go ahead, please.
Jim Baker, the school board's looking at the 32 credit graduation option. Most New Hampshire schools have a 24 credit requirement. The superintendent has stated more classroom time needs to be devoted to core subjects like math and English. Before COVID, math and English each met 3.5 times a week. During COVID, they've been meeting about 2.5 times a week. What is your position on reducing the 32 credit option and allocating more class time to core curriculum like math and English?
I don't know if I'd want to reduce it entirely. I think there is a benefit of having those opportunities. Maybe not going all the way down to 24, maybe going down to 28 as a kind of like that medium. But I do think there are some opportunities that our students get at Sanborn that they don't get at other school districts due to the higher graduation requirements.
So I would want to look, I mean, I think the core is already 28, if I'm not mistaken. Is it 24? I think ours is 28. The diploma that most people graduate with, I think, is 28 credits. So is it 20, either way, I would want to look at look at what are those extra credits actually being devoted to. Again, I'm talking about the value of the Sanborn diploma and the currency. If I'm an employer, if I'm a college, I'm not necessarily looking at the number of credits, but I want to know what was achieved during those credits, right? I'm looking for outcomes. So I think I would want to take a hard look at, which I assume this is why the board is looking at it now, exactly what are those additional credits being devoted to, how is the time being spent, and whether or not the allocation of the additional funds that we have, the additional time that we're spending, makes it worth it for the student in the long run. And if there's a way to make the student just as prepared, just as marketable, and just as strong an entrant into the workforce or into college, then I think we need to look seriously at it. I wouldn't be opposed to looking at it.
Okay, thank you.
Yep.
Ms. Collier.
Hi, Tammy's question for you questions on Fremont certainly made some questions arise for me. My understanding is that Fremont is looking at other school options for a couple of reasons. One is they have the possibility of paying a lot lower tuition rate than they pay now. And secondly, Sanborn's outcomes for students haven't been as high, for instance, as Pinkerton, which is one of their options that they're looking at. It seemed that you were saying that you would like to look at the possibility of offering Fremont membership on the school board, seats on the school board, Heather. And I wonder if you would clarify that, if that's true, and what ways you think might be used to Mike, I guess, to market Sanborn as the most viable option for Fremont or other school systems to come to, with or without seats on the school board.
So I do think since they have been part of our community, they've paid tuition, they've been part of Sanborn for so long, they understand Sanborn, they understand who we are as a district. And I would be open to discussions of giving them a seat on the school board and giving them a say. I do know that is something that a lot of the Fremont parents have said, is that they feel like they don't have a voice, they don't have a say in what happens in their children's education because they are paying the tuition. So that would be my thought, would to give them that kind of voice and some agency around that.
So for me, that's not as viable an option for me, just because the amount that they're paying compared to what Newton Kingston residents are paying is it doesn't really add up, right? So the angle that I would take on this would be to market Sanborn a little bit more heavily, a little bit more in a more value-driven way, right? So we think a lot today about. I just had this conversation the other day about certificates and how important, you can get a certificate in an 18-week online course, or you can get a certificate in doing this 6-week thing over here, right? It's not just preparing students to have the knowledge that, when I get out of school, I can supplement my I don't have to go straight to college. Maybe I can get some of these certificates, or maybe while I'm in college, I can do some of these other learning opportunities. It's even bigger than that. It's how do we graduate students with the certificates? How do we build real-world skills that are measurable and transferable into our education? If you can say to somebody from Fremont, hey, you send your kid to Sanborn, here's what's going to happen. They're going to graduate. Being a Sanborn graduate is going to mean more than being a Pinkerton graduate, a somewhere else graduate, right? The weight.
No
of that
friggin' way.
experience. What? Oh. Anyway, my apologies. The weight of that diploma will be effectively increased if we can build more in, right? So that's where I'm sort of headed in that regard.
I'm just going to throw a comment in if I can. I'm not sure you can just hand out school board seats under state law. I think they have to be part of the district. I mean, you have to
Well, that's what I was saying.
formally
That's
kind of,
what I was saying, like
and that's a lot more complicated question. I'm not going to try to get into that, but
No, I would not hand out school.
and I'm not saying it's a good idea or a bad idea. I just think that's a big, complicated, sort of multi-year legal kind of issue about how you would do that and whether it would be worth doing and so on. Anyway, other questions? Of course.
Tammy Mahoney. It's been a tough year in the world, and here on the Sanborn School Board, same thing. We faced a lot of difficult decisions, made a lot of difficult choices, and I wonder if you could tell me, we had a couple of tough decisions that we wrangled with last end of the summer, beginning of the fall, regarding how to have the students, how we were going to start school, what tier we were going to start at, fully remote, have the students come to school, some hybrid solution, which is different from what we've ended up employing now. And there was also a discussion about whether we would have the teachers be able to teach remote or come to the schools and teach from their classrooms. And those were pretty heated discussions, so I'm wondering if you could tell me what your position was on those decisions back at that time, and if you were on the board now and deciding those, how would you vote now? Would that be different?
I wanted in-person learning. I had gone to the first school board meeting that you had in August. I was a proponent of in-school learning. For those that don't know me, I'm a mental health clinician. I am a program director for a mental health agency, and I have more kids hospitalized and more kids with suicidal tendencies because of COVID and not being around, not being in school, not having access to resources. So I was in agreement I wanted in person. I know why you made the decision that the school board did, and it was an extremely tough decision. But I would have preferred in-person learning because of the mental health services around our children. So that was that's what I really wanted, was in school.
And the teachers?
I felt like the teachers being in school was good. I felt like they need to be able to teach. I know that I work from home, and it was impossible during the lockdown to work from home with my child. She's sitting over there right now. But I was in agreement with the teachers being in the schools.
For me? Okay, so I'm gonna be honest, I didn't know enough. When we were about COVID, I was like, I don't know. In school, it was a real coin flip for me. I know that as a teacher myself, I prefer in-person learning I teach both. I teach online, I teach in the classroom. In person is obviously superior, especially for younger kids. It is, it's the silver bullet. You have to have it, right? It's not as good of an experience other ways. So, knowing what I knew just after I saw my wife as a teacher in Salem, they went back in the fall full-time, full PPE, all the desks had the shields and everything and they did it. And I was like, okay, this can happen, this can work. So yeah, I mean, it took me a little longer to get to the idea of in-person learning, but it's something that I absolutely support because I felt like I needed to know more at that point. On the issue of teachers teaching from home or from school, I've been home working myself since the whole thing started, and I can attest to the fact that it's just insane. It's so difficult to do. So teaching from school would be probably, I would imagine, preferable to the teachers, so I would have supported that.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Other questions? Yes.
Micah, this one's for you. Just off of your response to Annie's about the Fremont students, when we're looking at possibly less credits and spending less and less teachers, how would you offer those kind of certificate programs with less? Yeah, sure. So I think it's important to note that you can do more with less, right? Less budget, for example, can come for a variety of reasons. So the reason that our budget is less than it was last year is because we reduced the building, right? We made changes. We shifted personnel. So we were able to free up funds for certain things like intervention, like academic programs, all these things. So in terms of adding, you think about certificate programs and increasing the value of the experience. It's not necessarily adding more, but looking at how. How do we arrive at the educational outcomes that we want? Do we do it the way that we've always done it? Here's the curriculum. You can look at it and say, what do I want a student to be able to do, right? This competency-based approach. And then it's about how can I change the way that I teach those outcomes? How can we change the way that we get more efficiency out of the process that we already have, right? So I think it's less about adding things in and what you would think would drive up a budget, but using dollars more smartly for better reasons or for better use cases and more efficiencies. I think that one was just for me. But
any other questions? Well, thank you very much for an informative discussion. Best wishes in the election. So Dan, who's up next? We do the planning board and then we'll finish with the selectmen. So you covered the rest of these?
Yeah.
All right. So, planning board candidates, come on up. They're somewhere over there, grab a mic. Don't get too close to that guy, but keep some space. Okay, hi Dennis, if you can hear me. Yep. We will patch you in, and Diane is a wizard at those things, so she'll know what to do. So, my apologies for being a little bit late. I had the wrong time on my calendar, and I got the, hey, get over here. So I didn't catch the very beginning, but I trust you each get a chance to give a kind of introductory statement. I think we have one gentleman who's going to join us by Zoom. So why don't we just start at the far end of the table? We'll work our way down and around to the gentleman on Zoom. Great. So introduce yourself and, tell us a little bit about yourself and why you'd like to be on the planning board.
Don't forget to use the microphone.
Right. Grab a hold of that or clip it onto you or something so that people can hear it or listen in remotely.
Good evening to everybody that's out there and watching, and I'd like to thank you for this opportunity to come before you, to be able to run for the planning board. My name is Robert Marshand. I go by Bob. So I put a letter in the paper for anybody who didn't get to see it last week. It was in there, and it talked a little bit about myself, being a high school graduate, going into the Navy right after school, doing a couple of trips over into the Mediterranean, Indian Ocean, and all of that. So I've got some life experiences sitting off the shores of Beirut, watching their buildings burn for a while. I got out of there, I became a truck driver, got into the service industry, delivered milk for a while. Most recently, for 3 years, I was picking up hazmat waste, so I know quite a bit about that, which would come and help out with, so we don't end up with any special Superfund projects that we really don't want in this town. I also deal with a chemical company right now that I was blessed to get a job with, that I deliver chemical treatments for boiler systems and cooling, closed tower loops, biocides and stuff like that. So I'm still involved with that. We moved here, my family, myself, my wife, my daughter, son-in-law, and granddaughter. We bought a two-family on Highland Ave back in July of 2018. So I saw that it was posted that nobody was running for the planning board with this new job that I have. I'm generally out of work early and home by about 1 o'clock because I go in super early. I figured this would be a good opportunity for me to be able to help out with the town and become part of the town. You know, my wife and I have always said, listen, if you don't vote, you don't have the right to piss and moan about the people that are running the show and taking care of matters. So I'm a firm believer that you need to get your hands dirty and get involved and be part of the solution and not a hindrance. Now, as a kid, I grew up, my father was a contractor, so I do have some knowledge with that. I've done a lot of work on the house that I owned in Salem, Mass. I also have seen what towns look like when they keep putting up apartment buildings, 4 levels, 5 levels, 6 levels. I see what congestion happens, and I don't want that. And I don't want that for this town of Newton. What I want is to be able to promote some business, get it in here, so that these wonderful people that we have, a couple of them standing back, both the chiefs of the fire and police department, so that they can get the tools that they need to do their jobs. We have a lot of towns out here in the state of New Hampshire that they work off of volunteers. And let me tell you, this younger generation, they don't like to volunteer for nothing. So we are truly blessed with this town to have these people that are putting their lives on the lines for us. And we need to be able to come up with money and do that, but we can't keep putting a tax burden on the homeowners, which I am one of, like I said, and expect them to keep just shelling out money, especially with what we have to do for the school board. So I think it's very important that we can promote some business in here, get some good business in here, and do our backgrounds with them to make sure that they're not coming here because they're running from somewhere else. And I'll do that so that we don't end up with issues and problems with them, so that we're not dealing with lawsuits, or we're not dealing with half-done construction sites that are sitting there and that they look like crap because they can't get finished. I'm getting the cue. My time is up. So thank you.
Can everyone hear me? All right, perfect. So I'm Mark Levoy, for everyone that doesn't know me. I try to think about everything with a little bit of a long-term lens. And in taking a step back and looking at where Newton is heading in the next 10, 15, 20 years, I think the last year is very indicative of what we're going to see. At my company and at thousands of companies, we are planning on converting to a partial or full-time remote model, which is going to change the dynamics of people considering where to live. I think something like 20 million people over the last year have decided to move further away from the cities that they currently work towards, which poses a set of questions for us as a community and will have a large effect on what this town looks like in the coming years. I have seen this movie before. My town that I grew up in Massachusetts, which is about 20 miles outside of Boston, looked a lot like Newton about 30 years ago. What changed in that town was a big influx of people and a big influx of money that destroyed the historical character. It filled in all of the open fields, and it tore down a lot of the forests. And what we were left with is a very unstable tax base, a less beautiful community, and one that combated a lot of issues around water, conservation, and overall sustainability. I don't want to see that here. I know that there's only so much that a planning board can do, but I think it comes down to the small decisions that add up over time that ultimately impact the community over the long term. So to be a careful constituent and steward of the community that's been here for over 300 plus years, I see as an immensely important public service. And all I can say is that I'm going to be an enforcer of the zoning laws that we have in place. I think for any variances, they need to be carefully considered. And I think we really need to take into consideration, particularly after the drought that we had this past summer, of any water usage in particular, because that was absolutely frightening. And I know that my well didn't go dry, but I know certainly some others did. And as we start to see more development of all kinds, we need to be carefully considering how we're continuing to develop our community. In regards to businesses, I completely agree with that. I think we need to have flexible zoning, particularly in the village, in terms of allowing businesses into our community that are going to help not only enhance where we live, but for remote workers, there's going to be new demands in terms of the services that we're offering here in our town. So all of this, I think, we'll be considering in the next few years, and I hope that you'll consider me as a candidate with all of that in mind.
Thank you. And Diane, if we can patch in our remote participant.
Can you hear me okay?
Okay, Dennis, you're on.
Okay, thank you, Diane. I'm Dennis Moran. I've lived in town for about 10 years, just shy of 10 years, with my wife and my 5-year-old son. And I grew up in New Hampshire. I've lived here all my life. I'm a licensed professional engineer in the state of New Hampshire as well as throughout New England. And normally I'm on the opposite side of the planning board. I present probably 2 to 3 times a month for developers for various projects throughout New England, mostly in Massachusetts, sometimes in New Hampshire. And I believed in planned, sustainable growth within our community, but I realized the impacts of unplanned and careless growth just to generate tax revenue. And I think, a couple of the candidates already pointed out on some of the same topics. And I completely understand that growth and change will happen, but the key to a successful future is how we plan for that and how we, tailor our zoning and planning regulations to help suit the needs of the town. As I mentioned, I'm routinely in front of planning boards on behalf of my clients, and I also support many planning boards throughout New Hampshire and Massachusetts as a third-party professional peer reviewer. So I'm very familiar with local regulations as well as Newton's. I've designed and permitted some of the largest, most contended projects in New England on behalf of my clients. I was recently in front of the New Hampshire Siting Council for the largest solar project in New Hampshire, out in western New Hampshire. So I fully understand the ins and the outs of the local, state, and federal regulations. And I understand how a poorly written zoning regulation can affect the community or possibly improve the quality of life for our community. So I'm asking for your vote, and I look forward to supporting the town.
Thank you. Thank you. So, questions for our planning board candidates? Oh, come on, somebody's got a question for him. Come on. Mr. Baker.
Jim Baker. One of the biggest areas that's zoned commercial is referred to as the Puzzle Lane area. And they've had a long history of trying to build that out and a long history of hurdles and difficulties with meeting requirements and on both sides of the project. I'd like to know what your individual thoughts are on that project and, you know, what you see for it down the road.
Yeah, I mean, I think that we just need to stick to the code as best as we can, and when it comes to variances, we need to analyze them extremely carefully and tread lightly there. My biggest concern with that project is water and making sure that we're also, when it comes to usage and then also pollution, making sure that we're watching what's actually going to be happening there closely so that the rest of the residents here in our town aren't adversely affected.
I believe in, like my associate here said, that, you know, we have ordinances and we have laws that we put into effect for a reason, and that we need to stand by them, and we need to make sure that they are followed because they are there put for a reason, not only for the safety of the community, but the safety of the communities around us also, and the people who are going to be working at these locations. I also agree about the water levels. Some of these businesses come in, like the one I work at, I know we use an abundance of water. So if these people are coming in with businesses that are going to do that, we would have to make sure and check into how they're going to sustain that water usage and what's taking place. And I just think that there is sometimes, you know, depending on what's going on, you want to work with them and see what you can do. But I also believe that being a homeowner, that I was up there the other day again, taking a ride around, and there are a lot of homes around there. And the apartment buildings on the back section, that these people should have a say in what takes place in there, because they have to deal with the noise and what takes place there with the trucks, what time they're going to be rolling in there, and all of that, and what's going on. But we have to also protect the environment so that it's not just getting gutted and all cleared. So there's a lot to it, and I think, you know, you just take it in perspective is what it is. But I basically stick by your guns and go by with what you put down, with the master plan that's coming up in place, that's going to put forth what the town wants and what we're looking to do, and then just take it from there.
And
Go ahead, Dennis.
I'm still live, correct? Okay. I would generally agree with what Bob and Mark both said, and you know, we have regulations to follow that we have to stick by the books, because if you don't and potentially bend things too much, it's a potential liability for the community, and that's the last thing we want to get ourselves into. However, you know, Newton is one of the few communities out here that doesn't have a noise ordinance, and it definitely affects the neighborhood directly abutting Puzzle Lane. And you know, you see comments on Facebook all the time about the ongoing construction and vehicle noise there, but you know, maybe there's something that the planning board can do to put a conditional approval on this project to reduce vehicle noise from, say, 7 to 5 or 7 to 8, just to make the members of the community that are directly adjacent to this zone, commercially zoned property, to make sure that their lives are not negatively impacted to the point that they have to leave.
Thank you.
I have a question here.
We got another question. Yeah, Diane, could you please read the question
so
from Zoom?
I have a question from Jim Doggett. Are the planning board candidates prepared for night meetings, which can go past 9 o'clock? That's PM. And the meeting prep necessary to be an effective member?
Yes, I can accommodate that for sure. I'm currently working from home permanently until the fall, and then after that, our company's moving to a 3-2 model, so 3 days work from home, 2 days in the office. But I have a flexible enough schedule where I'm able to accommodate for the meetings.
Yep, the job that I have, like I said, I'm usually home by 1 o'clock. I'm blessed, my owner believes in a 40-hour week, so I get in early, I work, and I get done, and I'm home early afternoon, which would give me a lot of opportunity to be able to prep, to do the background searching that we might need to do about these companies that are filing for things, or looking up ordinances and making sure things are done. And I don't sleep much. I'm one of those guys my entire life because of the way I work. If I get 5 hours sleep, I'm good. So I have no problem with working late hours.
Yep, I just build it right into my schedule. I'm routinely on the road at night meetings, and 9 o'clock would be great, actually.
Yes. Ms. Collier.
Hi, Annie Collier. As you may know, I'm on the planning board. I ran last year because of my interest in the master plan. We are starting a master plan thing. A shameless plug for everybody to participate. The survey's going to be coming out probably in April, so the more people we have, the better our vision will be for where we want to go. I'm wondering what each of your view is on the master plan and your role in it. One of the difficulties is that only 3 members of the planning board can be formally on the steering committee, but you all have great input. I'd really love to see you involved. So if you'd tell me where you're coming from with the master plan.
Yeah, I think that I'm coming at it from 2 specific angles, I think. One is for preservation considerations. So, a few things that are on my mind are having a land conservation goal. I think right now, rather than just putting land under conservation as it comes up, is a little bit of scattershot approach. I think we need to have an idea as to what percentage we want to aim for and then get there. I think we need to be considering in future developments forest preservation and working with developers to set aside for the few tracts that we have left, set aside forests so that we're preserving habitats and ensuring that forest covers, protecting the land and our future there. As for rural and scenic road preservation, that's something that's been on my mind as well. So we can try to enforce that through road widths, make sure that there's minimal curb cuts when we're inserting driveways, and if there's 2 houses going in, having 1 road cut, for example. And then also better blending, and what I mean by that is allowing for a little bit more flexible lot shapes so that we can have driveways that go to houses that are sort of set behind either hills or behind forestry. As a way to sort of preserve our scenic roads and make sure that development is a little bit less apparent. I think we also need to be considering our historical assets. Again, I came from a town where a lot of houses were torn down and new ones were put in place, houses that were from the 1700s. And so I think we need to consider several things for that. One, a demolition delay, which is what a lot of towns are able to do, which is a bylaw that essentially will put a hold on any demolition of historical assets until the town's had a time to assess what they're losing. I think intentional neglect is something that we need to be worrying about, and having certain regulations in place that dissuade that and provide funding if needed in order to make sure that things don't go beyond repair. And I think some zoning flexibility as well in terms of our village, as I said before, to allow for businesses to move in some of the buildings downtown as we start to grow. I think the second big thing I'm thinking about is just smart development in general. So attracting small businesses to downtown, very important. I think we need to do a water analysis after the last drought. I'm very concerned about where we're heading with that, and that's something that we need to look at closely. I think another thing too is stimulating local agriculture. We have town land that does not have forests on it, and if we can encourage local residents to potentially take up tracts to do farming, I think that would be a really interesting way to get the community involved and in touch with its agricultural past. So those are some of the things that I've thought about for the master plan overall.
As well as I look at it as I love the town, like I said. I love the peace, the tranquility that comes with nature and the preservation, as what was stated with woods and Mother Nature. I mean, I can walk out my sliders and I look out in my yard and I've got rabbits running back and forth. There'll be a fox. I see hawks flying around. I mean, you don't get that in the city. And what a beautiful way to be able to raise our children. So I think it's very important that we're able to preserve that, and like what was said, is maintain a certain amount of this town, and then just be able to have sections to where we can have the, maybe some of the bigger businesses stay so that they're out of sight, but have that access to, like what they're worried about with where they want to put the Amazon place in, right? Because then you're worried about the trucking, and you're worried about the noise, and you're worried about all that. So you definitely want to be proactive and make sure that you have certain sections that you're willing to allot to do things with, and you want to be able to take care of that, and then allow your citizens to be able to grow and not put up the apartment buildings, but to have homeowners come in and allow them to come in, but again, to make sure that we maintain the ordinances with the siding, issues, the distance between the houses, the frontage off the streets and stuff like that. Because a lot of people aren't even aware of that, the state actually owns so far from the road into your land, even though you purchase it. So there's a lot to it, and like was said, I'd like to be proactive with this and start putting and implementing these things and not wait for the last minute. Because as what was said, I grew up in Salem, Massachusetts, and that town has become, I can't even say it because we got people, and there could be kids listening. It's ridiculous what has taken place in that historic town that once housed the Salem Witch Museums, and what the almighty dollar has done to that town, and what the people that are running it have done. And that's why we moved here.
We have yeah, for Dennis.
I think I'm still on mute.
Yes, we can hear you.
Okay, so I think there's a lot of opportunities, just touching on what Bob and Mark mentioned, was that in my professional experience, a lot of times we have developers more or less take advantage of loosely written regulations to get large projects in where they potentially shouldn't be. And, a lot of people support projects as long as it's not in their backyard. So I think there's the opportunity to create some overlay districts. Specifically, a lot of Massachusetts communities have done this already for like solar projects in town. So you do not, solar's great. I spent a lot of my time on solar, but you don't have a developer coming in here clearing 135 acres to develop a solar project to generate power that then gets shipped off to Massachusetts, Connecticut, Rhode Island. And it absolutely will generate tax revenue for the town of Newton. However, the greater benefit is for somebody that is not impacted by the project. The last time that I'm aware that this Newton's master plan was looked at was about 15 years ago in 2006. And I actually think a lot of the topics are relatively the same. What people's concerns back then were reducing large-scale projects. They want increased agricultural, small community, residential, and just tightening up some of those areas where the overall feel of the town could be impacted, and then we slowly turn into a Plastow or a Exeter type feel, or even Amesbury, although in downtown Amesbury is very nice and they planned that well. It's just not the direction I see that the town of Newton really wants to head.
Thank you. Do we have other questions? I don't see any, so thank you, gentlemen. Good luck in the election. So Diane, are we up to the selectmen?
Yep.
All right. It's like one of those maybe I shouldn't use this metaphor, but it's like one of those sporting contests where you go through the different levels and then you get to the top of the stack. Maybe it's more like WWE wrestling, if there's the history of that with our selectmen. But come on up, selectmen. And aspiring selectmen, or almost selectmen, candidates for selectmen. Grab a mic, make sure we can hear you, spread out, get comfortable. Is Bill going to try to join us? We don't know. All right. Okay, fair enough. Yeah, let's take a second to get your mics working.
Thank you.
All right, we're going to follow the same procedure. We're going to start at the end there and work our way down. Ms. Gagne, why don't you start us off with your introduction?
Well, my name is Lisa Gagne. I have been your selectman for 2 terms, 6 years. This is the first public office I have ever held and never thought I would hold, but I decided that I needed to do something to participate in the town. I've been here for over 27 years now, and so I ran. I succeeded, and my goal has always been to listen to the town and try to work with the board to give the town what it needs, and yet keep our operating budget at a sustainable amount. We're getting a lot of failed attempts at warrant articles, operating budgets, every time when we went to vote in March. By planning a little better, which I believe the board has been doing. We have been starting to work on building up reserves for the fire department, for the police department, for government buildings. We're still working on that. And I would say the biggest lesson I've learned in these 6 years is that change comes slowly. So I'm willing to, or I want to continue what we've started. And I hope that you will vote for me. Thank you.
Mr. Burrell.
All right, hour and a half, that's how much time we have?
Right.
Okay. My name is Matt Burrell. I'm running for another term for selectman, and people ask me why, and I say I'm running because I believe I can still help us. And here's what I'm about. I believe the Board of Selectmen needs to work together. 5 of us need to work together, and we need to get results. I believe the board needs to continue to work collaboratively with the department heads because they know their industry, and more importantly, perhaps more importantly, they know the boundaries set for them by the taxpayers. And we need to listen to them. We need to make sure they have a voice because in the end, this is about being a voice for taxpayers. 5 of us on the board all have at least that in common. We're all taxpayers, and typically when we're talking to people, working with people, they are also taxpayers. I believe in data-driven decision-making. We need to have, I say it all the time, we need the facts, we need the business case. I believe in investment. If it makes sense, it's a need versus want thing with me. And I believe that value is measured in not just dollars and cents. There's other things that measure value for the town. This board has accomplished a great deal while I've been a part of it. It takes many people to be successful, right? We succeed or we don't as a board. And we need the community's help. We need the department heads' help. We need the staff to be successful. I mean, COVID-19, look at that, right? That's what everybody's talking about now. COVID-19 was a tough year for the world, tough year for this town, but it should never be lost no matter what happens, that this town was able to accomplish a lot through COVID-19. And I like, Lisa talked about putting forward budgets that I think are palatable, proposed budgets at least, palatable for the town is important. We usually, since I've been on the board, we run at a surplus. We hardly ever encumber funds. Some goals to continue to work with every single board member. I think that's important. Need to continue to work with town staff and department heads. And we all need to work together to keep costs at a minimum. I think we need to commit ourselves. You know, the school board people are sick of hearing it from me. COVID-19 derailed it a little this year. We need to work together. We need the school board meeting with the Newton Board of Selectmen, hopefully the other boards of selectmen in our school district. We need to invest in technology where we can. Usually that's low dollar options. Have a soft spot in my heart for veterans. My dad was a veteran. One of the things I proposed was to have a Veterans Day breakfast. We did that a couple of times. Had a lot of help to do so. I'd love it if the school board would partner with us on that to make that happen. In the end, we need people who can solve problems, okay? Everything is great when it goes according to plan. It's what you do when it doesn't that's important. And at the end of the day, I'm not in this room to win arguments. I'm in this room to get things done and move the town forward. So March 9th, I'd appreciate it if you'd consider me. And at the end of this, take any questions. Thank you.
Mr. Crenolick.
All right, thank you, sir. Good evening, everyone. First, I want to thank you all for joining us tonight in person here and on Zoom. I want to thank Selectman Burrell and Selectwoman Collier for their service to this town. My name is Edwin Crenolick. I work full-time as a Special State Police Officer with the Aviation Unit at the Massachusetts Port Authority. In this position, I'm also the elected Union Steward for Teamsters Local 25. In the town of Newton, I'm a firefighter for the Newton Fire Department. I've also served on the Newton Planning Board as an elected member for the past year. I was very proud to be part of the residents who worked together to get Greenie Park renovated. This town means so much to me. My wife and I moved here in 2018 and now live happily here with our 2-year-old son and 3-month-old daughter. I'm here tonight to ask you for your vote. I believe I can bring a new vision and a new voice to this board. I'm not here for any personal gain. I'm here as a taxpayer for the taxpayers. We need to analyze all of our expenses to reduce our costs. My goals in this office will be to reevaluate our town contracts and ensure Newton is getting a fair deal on the work being done. I will make it a goal to pursue as many grants as we possibly can to offset any spending. Second, we need to let our department heads run their respective department without any micromanaging. We hire and elect our department heads to do their job and manage the day-to-day of running their departments. The Board of Selectmen need to be more open with their communication. My goal for the residents is full transparency and communication, which we will accomplish by being more active on social media. I promise to be a selectman who will always be there for those who need answers. The town needs have changed, and it's time we taxpayers and residents move on with that change. Thank you.
Questions? I'm sure we have questions. So who would like to lead off with a question for the selectman candidates? Ms. Collier.
Hi. There's been some back and forth on Facebook about the fire station and is it $400,000 or $300,000 bond?
$300,000.
$300,000 bond. What I'd like to do is to have you folks discuss what are the needs at the fire station and why. Are any of them a potential liability for the town? And how do you propose they be taken care of? If the sale proceeds from the old fire station are used to complete the new one, will any of that money be available for other town building needs? And how do you propose solving the roofing and other issues in town buildings? Please be specific on possible sources of funding. Do you need me to break that down into pieces, or do you have the gist?
I'm good.
I have the gist.
Why don't we start, we'll go in the reverse direction. Mr. Crenolick, why don't you start off and work our way kind of in the reverse direction?
So first, the needs to complete the fire department are basic. The sprinkler system and the exhaust system. Those are two things that, for the health and safety of the firefighters, need to get done. We can't sit here and risk liability for a firefighter to get cancer and not go back home to their families because we didn't do a proper job on the exhaust system, on the sprinkler system, and on the building of the fire department. In regards to funds, and I believe in 2018, the building committee that built the fire station said the funds, they recommended that funds from the sale of the fire station should go towards the fire department, which is on the warrant article. What were the rest of the questions?
Building, if there's other money left over, what about roofs on other buildings?
Oh, yeah, so I believe it was discussed in the deliberative session. I believe Selectwoman Gagne brought it up that the library trust fund does have enough funds to cover the roof. And I believe that's things we need to look into. We need to look into all forms of monies we have in this town. From what I understand, we have about 27 accounts of money just sitting there, from trust funds to different accounts that we can use to support us, the taxpayers, so we don't have to take on that burden. The town has the funds to fix these buildings and make them stable buildings for the future. What other question was it? Is that it?
Yep.
Mr. Burrell.
All right, so the sprinkler system at the new fire station needs to be completed. We have a plan that's going forward for that. We're at probably a quarter of the way done to finish the sprinkler. We have a change order was done in September of 2019, I believe. So ideally what the board has decided to do at this point is, let's see how close we are to that quoted number to find out what we have available. We do have funds in these accounts that Mr. Crenolick talked about, but we have limitations on those, limitations made by the voters when they voted. Some of the stuff we will be able to use for the fire station, for the sprinkler system, but some of it we may not be able to use if the warrant articles don't pass, right? So we need to look at everything we have. The exhaust system in the new fire department is the talk of the town right now. My thing is health and safety is paramount with me. I want to make sure we have a healthy and safe department, especially now that we have shifts in there. So my thing is data-driven decision-making. I said earlier, I was told as a member of the board, what we currently have for an exhaust system meets code. At the same time, I'm being told that it doesn't meet NFPA. We need to get the facts on that, and then if I am on the board, we need to make the decision at that point. Like I said, we do have those, depending on how the warrant articles shape out, we probably can cover a lot of this with the funds from the sale of the old fire station, which in those pamphlets it said would offset the cost of the fire station. So I believe that using those for that purpose only makes sense. In the end, the voters are going to tell us what we can do, because we have language in warrant article 4 now that basically prioritizes these things anyway. And I think the only other thing, Annie, you were talking about other town buildings. So again, we have funds available. We have an 8 Merrimack Road account, which is essentially revenue from rental fees, but we can only use those funds at 8 Merrimack Road. So if we need work on buildings over there, obviously that makes sense. Library, somebody talked about, library funds and stuff. Well, there's a warrant article, I don't remember the number. If that doesn't pass, the selectmen are not agents of that money and cannot use that. Look, what it all comes down to is you have to prioritize things. I think we've prioritized things. Health and safety is high priority. I think it is for everyone on the board. I'll go out on that limb. And then after that, we have to do what makes sense. If a roof is going to collapse and cost us, 10 times what the roof would cost, it only makes sense to invest in that roof. And other than that, I think I answered that question, right?
Yep.
Great. Ms. Gagne.
Okay, so my research into the fire station and the exhaust system indicates that the proposed exhaust system was approved, it was installed, there is a CO2 sensor. It may or may not be a manual system, however, it is an operating system. Do they have to open the bay doors? Maybe, maybe not. But we do, it's not like the station doesn't have an exhaust system. It does. That's the point that I've been making. So when it comes to the employee safety, yes, absolutely, employee safety is important to me. The safety of the employees at the town hall, the safety of the employees at the library, safety of our police officers, and the safety of our firemen, even the safety of our people at the transfer station. all of these people matter, and their safety is just as important to me as the safety of our fire department. So if the exhaust system is inadequate, then yes, I agree that we should look into another one. I will also say that there was supposed to be a grant applied for an exhaust system, which I found in minutes from, I believe, 2018. So I would like to see us look into that again to see whether or not we can get a grant for a better exhaust system, if that's a possibility. As far as the $300,000 going into this fund, I was in favor of it until the board's hands were tied. One of the things that had me in favor of it was in our proposed operating budget are the cost for repairing the library roof, repairing the tax collector's floor, and several other prioritized items that need to be taken care of before they become bigger projects and more liability for the town. If this warrant article passed, then those projects could actually be paid for out of that fund, and the money from the operating budget could then go into the unencumbered funds and eventually make it back to the taxpayers. That was my thought process. Now my concern is that if an exhaust system comes up as being $200,000 or $300,000, now all of those funds go only to the fire department, does not address any of the other needs. Our taxes will actually have to come out of the operating budget. None of that will be able to come back. To me, that was a fallback plan. And it'll become not fallback, but reality if this warrant article goes through. As my co-board members stated, for the library roof, coming out of that fund, absolutely, that's what we want to do with it. There is no board, committee, or anyone else who is allowed to expend from that fund. If the warrant article to allow the selectmen to be the expenders, agents, thank you, fails, then those funds can't be touched by anyone, any board, any department. So it is important that that warrant article passes. However, if it doesn't, we do have it in the proposed operating budget. So if that passes and the other warrant articles don't, we can still take care of these issues that are a priority.
Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you. Other questions? Why don't we, Jim, why don't you let Jamie go? Come on, Jimmy, you first.
Jamie Fitzpatrick, I just want to tag in a little bit more specifically than Andy did about the fire station. So I understand there's been discussions, notwithstanding a vote last year, to put up a $25,000 street sign. Is that correct, one? And if it is, do you support a $25,000 street sign for the fire department? Thank you.
Who are we starting with?
Why don't we go into reverse order? If that's okay. You're going to be stuck in the middle, I'm afraid, but.
Always am.
I am not in favor of a $25,000 street sign. Am I in favor of a street sign? You know, a replacement sign that would announce the safety complex, that would be visible both day and night? Absolutely. I am not familiar with where the $25,000 came from and whether or not there were more than one quote or if there were other sign options. I think that was just a talking point for the board that was presented to the board. So no, I am not in favor of the $25,000 sign.
So to answer your question more specifically, have there been discussions? There's discussions about everything, always. But I seem to remember a quote like that, 25,000. I think I voted it down then, because I think it was on last year's warrant, if my memory serves me. And I was one of the board members who voted no. If we already have signs there. If we need signs that you can see in the dark, or I believe the chief was talking about deliveries and stuff like that, then yeah, let's get something that makes sense. Let's get something that is a lot lower than 25,000. That's just my opinion, so.
So the $25,000 that was quoted in 2018 was for a sign that had the weather station, that had a signboard that different messages could be put on. We don't need that. We are lucky enough to have the 2 signs that are there right now. The fire department sign that's there right now cost us about $500. And luckily, Chief Alcadino and others that worked on it, we have a nice sign there. We're lucky that the EOC and Larry and Trish, who work on so many grants for this town, got us a signboard. The signboard you see at the transfer station or you see around town. $25,000 was the 2018 quote, and it's not needed anymore. I do believe that signs on the building's needed, as the original plan showed. If you look at the 2018 pamphlet, the original plan showed sign on the fire station that said Newton Fire Department that hasn't been put up. I don't know if it's around, I don't know if it's still a thing, but that's something that needs to be done. But we already have signs at the end of the street lit up that look very nice, that can identify that that is the safety complex.
Hang on, Jim, why don't you hang on 1 second? Let's get a Zoom question in, yeah.
Okay, so we have a question from Bob Donovan. Do the selectmen feel they should revisit the trash pickup in Newton? Hoppers are always full, mounds of trash have been on the ground, extra open containers being used.
We'll start this way. Edwin.
Yes, we should. We should look into ways to add maybe another trash receptacle. I mean, it's, as a taxpayer, as just a normal person who pulls up and sees the trash on the ground and the poor, employees at the transfer station who have to now take that trash and put it into the dumpster, it's unfair, and it doesn't look good. It doesn't look good for us who are paying a tax on the transfer station. So I think we need to look at different ideas and different ways to allow us to expand the transfer station and to allow more trash pickup, and possibly look at the trash contract that currently is underway with, I believe it's G Mello.
My answer to that question would be yes.
You don't want to go to the transfer
Yeah,
station?
I'll give you further than that. We had a meeting, I think, 2 weeks ago where we discussed this, and we have a transfer station manager. He's there every day. He's going to come forward with a proposal. Again, data-driven decision-making. I want to hear some facts from him. And if I'm still on the board, then make a decision based on that. But yeah, I haven't seen it myself. I've spent a lot of time at the transfer station as of late, if you might imagine that. But I haven't seen sort of the pile up. I know what he's talking about from, I think, a couple weeks ago. I want to first identify if how we're set up is causing that to be a regular thing. But I guess long-winded way of saying yes. So,
Ms. Conyer.
And I agree with Mr. Burrell on several of the items there. I don't disagree with him on any of them, actually. I will say that I am aware that there have been issues with some of the compactors lately, which has allowed the trash to fill up a little sooner. We have requested the transfer station manager look into possibly switching them out with other compressors, whether or not we need to bring in another bin and compactor, and where we would put it if we did bring one in. If I am reelected, then I will be reaching out to those who focus on transfer stations, because I came across a few of them at the conferences, and find out maybe we can do a redesign that will make the traffic and where we deposit our trash a little smoother. We still only have so much area at that transfer station, so we have to find the way that works best for us. Maybe we pay more for more frequent pickups, but we won't know until we get the data as to what is feasible, what the costs are, and then present it to the town and say, these are what our options are. If it's going to cost a lot, I want the input from the town before I make that kind of a decision.
He has a follow-up.
Follow-up question.
Okay, so I guess he wasn't quite clear. Hang on. I guess the question he really wanted to ask was he calls it a town trash pickup subcontractor,
So maybe the trash hauler?
and that could be.
Well, isn't there somebody that offers that service?
Yeah, there's, well,
Right, I think he
there's a
was
couple, but there's
thinking
ones.
about
yeah.
revisiting that issue is what I believe he's trying to say.
Is he saying yes? I see him on the screen.
He's saying yes.
Yes, that's the question, yes.
Okay.
So just to make it clear, and I'm not going to speak for Bobby, he can speak for himself, but my understanding is the question is, what about, and years ago we've talked about this, it's come up a couple times, what about the idea of offering a service for perhaps for people who don't want to go to the transfer station to get their trash picked up? And I think there is a private person that does that now. I don't know them personally, but that is a thing you can get in town. It's probably helpful for elderly people or, you know, if it's hard to get out, but should the town be offering that, I guess is the question.
Well, I think what he said is, have we given any thought to reassessing that? Is
I
that?
think that's what
yeah.
I think so.
Okay.
I think that Bob, you can unmute yourself and ask the question.
Yeah, I was
you know?
going to say.
Then it comes
Yeah,
right
Bob,
from
don't
you.
be bashful, just ask the
Yeah.
question.
Oh, we all know how shy I am. Can you hear me?
Yeah.
Yeah, we got you.
Okay, yeah, I'm not that shy, but, yeah, since the board voted to allow an in-town trash hauler, that's when the problem started with going down the transfer station, having mountains of trash, containers being loaded with trash because the hoppers have been overfull. And I did talk to some of the employees down there, and they said, yes, a good portion of it is because the guy's bringing in 5 loads of trash a day down there sometimes. That's what I think the town should be revisiting. We didn't have that problem until that started.
Okay, I'm going to, Bob, if you don't mind, I'm going to kind of summarize that. I think what I heard, it was kind of hard to hear, just so other people that are, say, on Zoom know what the topic is. The question is, Mr. Donovan thinks it may be possible that part of that overfilling problem is because the trash contractor shows up with a lot of trash all at once. And
correct.
So the question is, should there be some thought about that, or, you know, maybe there's a way to deal with that contractor differently? You know, like they only come at certain times or something, so that they don't show up and fill up all the hoppers.
Can I start with that?
Yeah, why don't we start with Ms. Gagne?
All right, so I just want to say that the board has been in discussion with the transfer station manager about this. It was a few months ago, I think it was, that the trash hauler actually came before the board and requested to be able to come on another day as well, so that and we received input from the transfer station manager, who said he thought it was a good idea. So now, instead of coming Tuesdays and Thursdays, he's also allowed to come on Saturdays. The amount of loads per week hasn't changed, so it should be distributing it a little more. Again, we've tasked the transfer station manager with coming back to us and saying, look, what is causing these issues? Is it the compactors? Is it the contractor? Is it the commercial trash hauler? If it is, do we need more pickups? Do we need to change the schedule of our pickups? Or do we need to change the schedule of the trash hauler? The people voted to allow this service to happen. This was not a Board of Selectmen decision. The voters said, we want to allow this service. The board is responsible for maintaining the policy for this. Now, we do have the ability to allow up to 3 commercial haulers to do this. We only have 1 in town right now.
Yeah, so I would,
Burrell, yeah, go ahead.
I would jump off of that saying, remember, the town did vote for this. We created the policy. The policy has different requirements in it. When we renew it, and I believe we renew it every year, right, the permit. When Lisa was talking about it, we were in here a couple of months ago, we were renewing it. I called the transfer station manager up and I said, and this was all on TV, I said, do you see any problems with the way we're doing things? He said, no, he does not see any problems related to this. The other thing too is, at the end of the day, he is providing a service to a bunch of people in Newton who are all taxpayers, as Mr. Dismelik said, for whatever reason, they don't want to go to the transfer station. This is a service for them. Those of us who have been on the board a while, every so often somebody says, when are you going to get curbside? We say, well, probably not for a long time. So this was kind of a tide you over thing, because a lot of people are like, why should I pay somebody from out of town to take my trash to an out-of-town site? I pay taxes, I pay for the transfer station. So, long-winded answer, I guess, if the commercial trash hauler who represents the same volume of trash that those same residents would be bringing to the transfer station, he's just bringing them in one load, less cars. If that's mucking up the work, so to speak, then we have not been told by our employees. Apparently Bob has, so I will go down there and talk to those employees and get some more info on this, but if we need to shift dates, that's always a possibility, so I guess.
Mr. Crenolick.
So I agree with both Selectwoman Gonier and Selectman Burrell. It is something that is very good for example, elderly or people who can't make it to the transfer station. That's not the issue. The issue is, and I saw it today, and the gentleman that does the trash pickup does a great job, but he comes all at once with a truck full, and that fills up. So if he does this and yes, well, like both of you said, he's just picking up trash from town. But if he does this at times when it's already busy, now all of this is going to load up, and then sometimes he has to drop it right there in front of the receptacle because it is so full. And then we're putting our transfer station employees, and I've seen it. I've seen the transfer station employees have to lift bags and do more than what is needed for their job. I agree with it. I agree with the trash pickup. I just don't agree. We have to figure out a different way to allow this gentleman to come without impacting the people who go down there, impacting our health and safety, and the employees that work at the transfer station. So where there is no backup, so it doesn't look like a dump and it looks more like a transfer station.
Thank you. All right. I'm going to, are we? Mr. Baker's been waiting. We'll let him get in and then.
Thank you. Yeah, I want to cycle back to the library fund. So is it my am I right to understand that nobody has authority over that fund?
That is correct.
Okay.
There are no agents to expend from that fund.
So even the library trustees have no authority?
Correct.
Okay. Thank you.
You're welcome.
Hang on a second. Ms. Collier, let's let Mary Jo have a word. And you got one? And you got one? Okay.
Hi, I just, Lisa, thank you for your service. Matt, thank you for your service. It's evident when you watch selectmen meetings, you do your work, you do your homework, you have the answers, you come prepared. My question is for Edwin.
Yes, ma'am.
Don't take this personal, I just curious. Last year you were voted to a 3-year term on the planning board. I'm just curious why you're running for selectman now instead of finishing out your planning board term and then coming to run. Just curious, any specific reason why you want to do this now instead of at the end of your term?
First, I want to thank you for everything you do. You know how, you're just awesome. It's really a simple answer. I got my feet wet in the planning board and I saw how that operates. But then I also see as a taxpayer how mismanaged personally the Board of Selectmen are. I feel the Board of Selectmen needs to, like Selectman Burrell said, needs to work together better. And I feel that doesn't happen. And I've gotten so aggravated from watching meetings, from one selectman saying this, one selectman saying this, then one going out there and saying something. It's the communication that bothered me. And that's the reason I said, you know what, I want to fix that communication. I want to have the communication for the taxpayers, for the residents, for the voters, for everybody in this town, to have the better communication. I love being on the planning board, and I would love to serve out my term, but seeing how this board is run and seeing how the communication is with the taxpayers, with each other, I wasn't happy with that. So that's why I chose to run.
Good enough. And if you do get elected to the select board, I will give you your options on the planning board. You do have options.
Oh, perfect. Thank you, ma'am.
This is from me. I would like to circle back to Evan about the, and Bob, about your trash thing. So if we tell this guy not to come in on Tuesdays, okay, so now he brings in 20 bags of trash. Now you're gonna have 20 cars coming in with still the same amount of trash. It's still gonna fill up. That's not an answer. I think the issue that we're having is that the fact that the compactor at that time was broke. And I think the biggest thing, we're gonna have to invest in something like that. And so I don't think your idea, I'm sorry, is not gonna cut it, because you're just gonna have a traffic jam instead. Do you see where I'm coming from?
Yeah, no, I definitely see it. I mean, we've seen it though, the compactors are breaking. And is that a reason that we're filling up on Tuesdays? We're filling up 3-4 truckloads. On Thursday, 3-4 truckloads.
But still, you're gonna have,
how do we know this is Newton trash? That's another issue that.
So we're gonna investigate the trash? Is that the plan?
Actually, I'd like to answer that question, if you don't mind.
Yeah, go ahead.
As part of the policy for this commercial hauler, he is required to bring bags that are tagged with where they come from, with himself, so we know where they came from. He is required to provide a list of the Newton residents that he's picking up for. And the transfer station employees are responsible for confirming in monitoring that the list is all Newton residents, that the bags are all tagged with him, so that if we do have any issues with the bags, including the fact that we require this commercial hauler, or all commercial haulers, to recycle, which means the 25 people that this person is hauling do not have to recycle. Because he is picking up for them, that trash is recycled, which means we've actually minimized the amount of trash that is coming in. But yes, the transfer station manager keeps track. We have a fee for the license for the year for the administration and monitoring of the service. So, and as you yourself said, the board relies on its department heads. We don't want to sit there and micromanage the transfer station, so we are relying on its manager to inform us if there are any problems and if there is anything he needs our help with.
So Diane, what was your question?
I was just making that comment.
Okay.
But I do have a bunch here.
Yeah, go ahead.
Hang on, can we get Annie's question? She doesn't have to wave her hand around. Ms. Collier, and then we'll do the ones from the...
Yeah. Okay.
I wanted to piggyback on the whole transfer station thing. First of all, I can't understand how anybody could want to have their trash picked up instead of wanting to go to the transfer station themselves. I mean, it's just an awesome place to be. The second thing is, one of the things that really concerns me is how we have to pay to get rid of our recyclables. And it's become, instead of becoming a major, really major money-making thing that we had, it's now, and which also supported our having, recyclable days or, hazardous material days and things like that. We're going to run out of that money at some point. What plans, if any, have you considered or are you considering with the trash station manager for making it back into a money-making operation?
I think it's me. Is it me?
Yeah, why don't we start this and we'll work our way down.
I'm the middleman.
So, I mean, one way we could do is we could start looking at charging for, construction equipment, drywall. And I know we charge for small amounts, but try to figure out a different fee schedule that we can do for items like that we have to specially dispose of. So I think that's one way we can look at, getting some funds from the transfer station.
Yeah, I would kind of agree with that. I'm not sure we're ever going to be able to make the money back that we had, simply because, from kind of a global standpoint, we had a buyer for that stuff, not just us, right, but the world, and that buyer has reduced their interest in the recyclables and stuff like that. But these are hard decisions we're going to have to make, who's ever on the board next year, because we're kind of coming to that point where we have to if we're going to change our policies or whatever.
Ms. Gagne.
All right, well, I will say that people do take advantage of the bulk voucher day. The voters voted, I want to say 2 years ago, to make it an annual Prior to that, the Board of Selectmen had it as a biannual event, where it was every 2 years, and that way the board was able to do hazardous waste one year, and then bulk voucher the next year. With the voters saying, no, we want it every year, that happens. My concern is that increasing the fees, if we have to be careful. They do need to be looked at. It is quite possible that we could potentially increase the fees to a certain degree for the non-acceptable items. But we don't want to go too much to try to recoup what we've lost in recyclables, because then you've got everybody waiting till bulk voucher day.
Except non-Newton residents. So it might be possible to do some increasing of fees for people who are not already paying taxes.
Correct. We do have a couple of surrounding towns who do utilize our transfer station for their bulk items, and they actually pay a higher fee than the Newton residents do to bring their bulk items to our station.
So those are being looked at as a part of your overall
review of the transfer station, yes.
Thank you.
Yes, sir.
Good evening, everybody. Bob Marshand. So 20 years in the rubbish business. And from what I've seen with what's taken place in our transfer station, it's simply this. China was taking and buying all the iron that they could. However, they've been getting an influx of contaminated metals that was costing them more to process than what they were able to use and get a deal with. And so they stopped doing business with the United States. That's why our metal's sitting where it is, and that's why the prices have hit where it's hit. The same thing I was talking with Matt about the cardboard. So the revenues that we were getting for this town, that's not going to happen. And I can tell you right now, it's not going to happen in the near foreseeable future. What I see is that we, as the town, are going to have to be proactive and start immediately looking into other revenues than just simply chasing our tails around. Because the other problem we have is that this town is growing with the houses that we see being developed. So now we have not implemented anything. We've kept it the same, and now you've got more trash coming in. It doesn't, like it's being said, it doesn't matter who's bringing it in. We have more trash than what was once coming in. So we are going to, have to look into getting our own vehicle, because let's face it, a rubbish company, for what we pay them to come haul that trash and bring it to a dump, we're on the bottom of his schedule. He's got bigger fish that's paying him a lot more money to take care of their businesses. So they're on his list to take care of before he comes running down here to take care of us. So we're gonna have to either get a truck and start hauling it ourselves to the dump, or we're gonna have to see if we can put this out to bid and get somebody that's gonna be worthy and show up to be able to take care of these, and probably take care of them more than what they're getting dumped now on a regular basis. And that's pretty much it, cut and dry. Because if we don't, the same scenario is gonna happen over and over again. Like I said, 20 years in a business, I know the way name the companies. I've worked for a bunch of them. Waste Management, Laidlaw, GSX. I've been to all of them, and they all operate the same way. So we need to be proactive with this, and we need to start looking right now at what's going to happen, because the other issue that we have, that trash that hits the ground and it stays there, now you're talking about a rat infestation. And when I bought my house on Highland Ave, it took me 3 months, because I was coming home in broad daylight and rats were living in that house. And I'm talking Norwegian rats that are good size, like this, that have come in here, and they will continue to grow and live and develop there, and then they will start to hit other areas of the town. So this is not an issue that can be taken care of lightly. It needs to be addressed and done immediately. So I'd like to hear what you have to say about maybe doing something about that.
Ms. Gagner, from start at that end.
I do agree with you, and as we stated previously, we do have the transfer station manager tasked with coming back to the board with what his issues are at the transfer station, what he feels are the root causes of those issues, and what are his proposed solutions for those issues. That is what our department heads are for. Now, the Board of Selectmen is the authority over the department heads. However, as my associates here have mentioned, you know, we have to trust our department heads to be able to do their jobs. So the first thing is to allow the transfer station manager to come to us, if I'm on the board after March, and advise us and make recommendations to us, whether it's with quotes, facts, figures, on what the next steps are to be. If worst case scenario, he doesn't come up with a solution, then the board will have to look at other options themselves. So I would say that first we allow our department head to do his job and come to the board, and then if he's unable to come with a solution, assist him the best that the board can do. But we do have to come up with a solution. If this is an ongoing issue and not just a temporary one, then we definitely need to do something to address it.
Yeah, I would say, can we improve? We can always improve. We should always look for ways to improve. If this is an ongoing issue, I'll use Lisa's words. If this is an ongoing issue that's been identified by our department head, then we need to address it. So.
Yeah, I mean, I agree completely. I think it needs to be done sooner rather than later. We're very lucky to have a great transfer station manager, and I think he will come up with the solutions, but it definitely needs to be done sooner rather than later to avoid any more costs that could affect us as a town.
Thank you. Other questions? I think we have, well, yes. One more, and then we'll go to the remote participants.
Hi, it's Annie Collier. I just wondered, I don't want to leave the police department out of this, so I wanted to ask, are there any possible liability issues at the police station? What are they, and what solutions are you proposing? And please be specific on how you think they'd be funded.
Me first, I believe?
Sure, why not?
Yeah. So looking at the police station, it wasn't built to be a police station. You know, different things we have issues with is I don't believe there's a firewall there in the garage. I don't believe there's an exhaust system in that garage, and that building is not ADA compliant. That building doesn't have an elevator. The lobby vestibule isn't made for ADA compliance. I think we need to look at grants, and we need to look at different ways to make that building ADA compliant, make that building safe for the officers. Make when an officer pulls in, he has to close the garage, but he first has to turn off the car, and sometimes that might not be ideal if you have a individual in the back. And I just think we need to look at, the exhaust is a big deal. I mean, carbon monoxide poisoning could happen. And that building, like I said, wasn't designed. It was designed to be a regular house with a garage. And so I think with grants and with different options, we should definitely be looking into renovating that building.
And funding?
Funding could come from grants. I mean, we definitely should look into more grant work. I mean, Trish McCarthy has went above and beyond for the EOC and allowing us to have grants to fund us during COVID, and I think there are grants out there that we should definitely be looking into.
Yeah, we should take care of all of our buildings, maintain all of our buildings, I think is the way I would put it. We don't have an endless supply of money to do so we have to prioritize when we do so. Talked a little bit earlier about what our priorities are right now, and absolutely there are things in probably each building that should be prioritized. I think we talked about the fire department stuff needs to be taken care of. The sprinkler system ASAP, and we need to move on from there. But I would go back to say that I said in my opening statement, our department heads know their boundaries. Those boundaries are set by the taxpayers, and they know how to address things with us within those boundaries. And that's what we've always tried to do. That's what we should do moving forward.
I would like to say that one of the things that we are aware of is the need for the vestibule to be ADA compliant by moving the counter down to be of the appropriate height, and that has been planned for in the operating budget proposed for this March. That was brought to us by our police chief. The police chief has also come to us in the past for things such as putting glass in the doors for the safety of the officers so that they can actually see before they open the door. That has been done. He has done other renovations to this building, and so has his predecessor, in order to make it more efficient as a police department. As far as the need for an elevator for ADA, that need is not a requirement because the second floor is not used. So we do not need an elevator. There is a lift of some sort in there that was used by the previous owner, but we don't need an elevator as long as we are not using that second floor, which was the home of the previous owner. Now, as Mr. Burrell stated, we don't have unlimited amount of funds. Our department heads come to them and they are asked every year, what do you need? What do you see as your upcoming needs for the following year? This includes for buildings, maintenance, repairs. They come to us, they tell us what they need. We see if we can find a way to get it in the budget. Do we encumber the funds? Do we propose it in the budget? Do we present it to the voters? And that is what what I intend to continue to do, is to rely on my department heads to tell me what they need, because they're in those buildings every day. They know what they need.
One of the things that I'm really looking forward to is getting the input from the department heads as far as long-term capital planning and master plan. Put in our master plan, one more plug. So I think it's going to really help us as a town. And thank you, as selectmen and prospective possible selectmen, to get the engagement of people in the town.
Diane, I think on behalf of a remote participant.
Yep. This is from Bob Donovan. As a select person, do you feel it's right or wrong to be on Facebook going back and forth with others as a single select person?
Mr. Crenolick, we'll start at your end.
My end? I don't think so. I think the select person represents the whole select board. I'll use an analogy that I forgot who told me. If I go out today and rob a bank, it's not going to say Edwin Crenolick robs a bank. It's going to say Newton firefighter, Massport police officer robs a bank. Anything I do in my personal life will reflect the board if I do get on. So I believe a select board person, if they go on Facebook, they are speaking on behalf of the whole select board.
So I guess my answer is no. I don't think so. I don't do it. I think I'm going to give up Facebook for Lent, quite frankly. I think I'd be much happier if I did so. I typically, I might go out there and post things about my campaign, or I post things for the recreation or something like that, but other than that, no. So.
Ms. Gardner.
Well, I'm going to have to be the odd woman out here by saying, yes, I do believe that the people want to hear from the board and board members and anyone who has the answers to the questions that they are asking. So if a board member is responding to questions and they are responding with their selectman hat on, then I would expect that to be done with a disclaimer. I'm speaking as a select board member, or a disclaimer that says I am speaking as a resident, or I personally, is another way of phrasing it. This is making it clear. This is not the board speaking, it is the individual. I also believe that having a board with various points of view makes the board a more effective board, because then they can hear things that they may not have thought of. As a whole, I believe our board has been very cooperative. Even if we don't always agree, we've always been professional. And I've heard, even tonight, that people feel that the Board of Selectmen and members of the board need to open up communications even more. Even our respectful candidate here has said that the board needs to be out on social media more. So when I personally respond to posts on Facebook, I tell people I'm responding personally, but at least I'm providing answers, and I am providing links to the documents or URLs to where the information can be found. Everything I post out there is either an opinion and is stated as such, or it is public information and I show where it can be found. So I see nothing wrong with any board member or commission member being allowed to do so. We are residents as well as board members, and we should not lose our voice as a resident just because we are a board member.
Other questions? Do we have any other remote questions?
I have my list.
Uh-oh. Okay, hang on. Well, before we start your list,
I'm letting
do we
everybody
have
else
any
go.
other questions in the audience? Because those chairs are not that comfortable. Go ahead.
Okay.
This is true.
Okay. So I did this a couple of years ago when there were 3 new seats open. So you're going to hear it again. So how many selectmen's meetings have you attended in the past year?
Does Zoom count?
No.
Zoom doesn't count. In person, I would say about 3 or 4.
Oh, okay. you'd have to count Zoom because in
Yeah, I was
fact,
gonna say.
because we did Zoom. You're right,
Yeah. Zoom, I would say about 6 to 8.
Okay. And I know your
I
answers.
think I've been to all of them.
Yeah.
Pretty much, and Lisa's been to probably 95%. Okay, so last year the selectmen held 66 meetings, which is more than twice a month. Some of those meetings were held on Friday evenings, and I know that. And most of those meetings were to keep abreast of the pandemic. Then from October to January, budget season, meetings are held 3 to 4 times a month. Some meetings can last up to 4 hours. Mind you, this is just for meetings. Knowing that the time commitment is not twice a month for 2 hours, do you feel you can fulfill the requirements to be a selectman?
Luckily, my training on the planning board with
This planning board does not meet as many times as these guys do.
Yeah, but we had a meeting once that went to about 10:30, 11.
Yeah, that was good.
Yeah.
One
There was many times I was just speaking.
Okay.
I'm
Sorry.
definitely ready to make that commitment. I understand the commitment need as my full-time job and my part-time job have. You know, as a firefighter here in town, at any time of day, I'm available. You know, I have to be available, and I feel I'll be able to commit to that as a select board member.
Great, excellent. So communication, as you notice, is extremely important. Staff will sometimes need to poll the board to get an answer to time-sensitive issues. We will use text messaging, emails, phone calls. A response sometimes is needed within a few minutes to a few hours. Waiting a day for your response can affect how the issue is handled. Are you able to take such communications during your normal workday, and can you react quickly to such communications?
Yes. That needs an explanation, or yes is the answer, yeah.
Okay, so you can take text messages during the,
Yep,
okay,
yeah,
great,
yeah.
excellent. Okay, so there will be documents that you should review prior to the meetings that will be made available to you electronically. To view these documents, the town provides a laptop, a VPN, SharePoint. Are you familiar with using a laptop and the 2 apps that I just mentioned?
Yes, ma'am, I am.
Okay, These are for you too. This is for the two incumbents.
I'm sorry about those Friday meetings, by the way.
Yeah, right. You are both running for another term. Why are you willing to take on another 3 years?
I would say because I don't feel I'm done yet. And I think, as I said at the top here, I think I can still help us. And this was a tough year. In 2020, we all know that. I think it was a very responsible, very tactical year. I think we need to get a little more strategic this year and work on some things that were just, we couldn't do in the way we're operating, so.
Right, well, as I said in my opening statement, change is slow. I found that out the hard way. And we have started making changes for the good. Part of it does have to do with the needed infrastructure, the aging infrastructure, the equipment that our departments are utilizing. These are things that can still be planned for and come to fruition. Part of what we do is we sell the voters on what it is we're trying to do with the town. So I want to be able to continue to do exactly that. Tell them why we need something and get them to understand that need and therefore approve those expenditures without trying to make it so difficult that we're driving the elderly out because the taxes are so high. One of the ways we did that, by the way, was when we changed the cable revolving fund. It used to be more limited as to what it could be used for purchasing. So it was presented as a warrant article, came to us by the Cable Commission, or Cable Committee, and the old fund was dissolved. The funds were put into a new fund that allowed us to focus on the technology of the town, the computers, the printers, the network, the VPNs, et cetera. All of these things are now able to come out of that fund that was just building with very little to spend it on. So I want to see us continue to find those kind of innovative ways to fund the work that needs to be done in this town.
I'm done.
Well, thank you. Do we have any other questions? Seeing none, thank you very much. Good luck in the race to everyone. See you all in March.